top of that, I can use Michael Bloomberg as an example. We have investment bankers and hedge funds denying investment money to the gun industry and putting pressure on other companies like Walmart and other places to get out of the firearms business. I have to assume that Michael Bloomberg is behind a lot of that with all his business connections and his Bloomberg Business Network and the amount of money he invests and other investors who invest in these various funds are engaged in. This is far above our level of playing field that we've had to deal with in the past. We also have intimidation and extortion. We've got anti-gun activists out there picketing and protesting anybody who sells firearms and ammunition, demonizing companies that support us, trying to undercut any funding that we might have. What they can't ban by legislating, they're trying to do by fiat. We are against a whole new battle. But there is some good news too. Opponents have sort of now been exposed. Beto O'Rourke did us a pretty big favor. In fact, President Trump blamed dummy Beto in a tweet this past week, for increasing the difficulty in reaching an agreement on any gun control legislation. I'll read his quote if any of you missed it. Dummy Beto made it much harder to make a deal, convincing many that Dems just want to take your guns away. The president was referring, of course, to Beto's comments at the Democratic third debate that they had in Houston, where Beto said, quote, "Hell yes, we're going to take away your AR-15s and your AK-47. Some Democrats have criticized O'Rourke's comments, saying it'll backfire and make it harder for them to pass their agenda as well. But they didn't say they disagreed with him. All they said was that making his position public wasn't smart politics. In fact, every single major Democratic candidate for president, not one of them stepped out and said he's wrong. They've exposed what their agenda is. And the good side to that is it's energized our base. It's why we have record attendance here today, probably. And it's helped, quite frankly, us on state legislatures on Capitol Hill in stopping some of the assault on our rights. The Democratic agenda has become very extreme. They used to claim they're for gun safety or for common sense gun control. Now they're for prohibition and confiscation. They have helped us change the playing field. We've said that for years, but now it's coming out of their own mouth. And like I was quoted by Associated Press last week, now we're going to make them eat their words. I need your help to do that. I've been in contact with the White House 4 times this past week, and the really good news is they initiated the phone calls. It wasn't me. We talked about the playing field and what's going on in Congress and where the White House is on this. And you all probably heard in the media that they were going to come out this past week with what their proposals were going to be, and they didn't. And the reason they didn't is the president has not decided yet on which directions he's going to go in. But they did draw a red line. There are certain things that are off the table. Obviously, anything like a gun ban or confiscation, prohibition is off the table. But off the table also is what the Democrats passed in the House with their universal background check bill. That one is not going anywhere. Also, the red flag law passed by the Democrats in Congress is not going anywhere. That's not to say we're all going to be everybody in the room will be happy with what does come out of the White House. But the White House is definitely pledged to support Second Amendment rights. And it's definitely in their consideration of anything that they do is not to infringe on our rights. What is on the table, and again, there's been nothing that's been agreed upon by the president yet. But what is agreed upon the table in some areas which we can totally support are significant efforts to help the mental health crisis we have in our country. In addition, the president is personally very upset with the fact that juveniles who commit violent acts gets the record sealed, and then that information goes into the database, so that then they're able to go past NICS checks and get their hands on legal means. It doesn't mean that they're not going to be for something, because they are. Now, what's being discussed these days basically are a couple things like, extreme risk prevention orders and the Manchin style background check, which is not a universal background check, but only applies to commercial sales. Starting with that one, they will not support the current wording of that. They will support something if wording is changed that does a few things. One, ensures more protections against anything turned into a registration system by the federal government or in fact some of the states. They're also very concerned about the fact of false positives. Right now, the vast majority of us that get denied the right to buy a firearm are denied wrongly because it messes up in the database. People with similar names, data that's put in that's inaccurate, and it's a significant number. And in fact, if you're denied, the average, and denied wrongly, the average time it takes to get your rights restored to be able to buy a gun right now is running 18 months. They're very concerned about that, and that's good. Whatever they will do, that will be addressed as well. They're also looking at doing some tweaking there, maybe having ways to get background checks done that don't go through the FFLs and the normal system. They don't have all the details worked out. There's pluses and minuses to each one of the things they're looking at. They're looking at creating a new category of people who can do background checks where you don't have to go through an FFL. And some of the importance of that, from the White House's point of view, is that in major cities, let's say like San Francisco, there are no gun stores. In Seattle, there's now only one gun store. In Chicago, I don't know if there's any in the city limits, or you have to go outside the city limits. There aren't very many in New York City. As the anti-gunners shut down more and more gun stores, it's much harder to exercise your buying and selling firearms. They're looking at that as well. So probably what we're going to see is something coming out of the White House to Congress. Also, Lindsey Graham's bill on extreme risk prevention orders. They will not support it in its current form. It would have to be changed because they're worried again about due process protections. Lindsey's bill does not set up a national, extreme prevention order system, but what it does do is provides funding to states to get them to be involved and engaged in that. But the White House's proposal is going to carry provisions to it that would make the 11 states that currently have those laws put in due process protections or not be part of the system to roll back some of the problems and egregious things we've seen. So again, nothing is lacking concrete. The president has not decided exactly what he's going to do yet, but he does consider second rights extremely important. You have to realize we're playing in a playing field. Public opinion polling is running very much in favor of background checks, running very much in favor of extreme risk protection orders. People don't look at the details, they look at the overall title. There's a lot of pressure being put on politicians right now from the other side, lots of money being spent by the other side. Republicans are in a position that they feel that they have to do something to be able to get reelected, but they don't want to hurt Second Amendment rights. So what we're going to see is something that isn't going to be perfect, but let me tell you what the good news is. It's not going to pass because the Democrats in the House, if they don't get their way, they're going to say no. And not only that, but I think the president proposes, they automatically oppose. So the bottom line is, when it's all said and done, my prediction is we're going to come out okay in the legislative field, which creates a bad problem for us in the upcoming elections, because this issue is being used against us very effectively, with millions and millions of dollars being spent against us. In 2018, for the first time in political races in the United States, there were more commercials run on TV and radio demanding gun control than supporting gun rights. And that's going to accelerate in 2020. We have our hands full, and I see the time Nazis telling me I have to go. But we're here all weekend, so I'll talk to you later. Thank you.
You also have in your stack a bumper sticker that says, "I am gun lobby." which leads us into the next panel. If I could get Rob Pincus and Jim Irvine up here. The elephant in the room. Rob Pincus will have 7 minutes and I know. And Jim's a pilot, so he knows exactly about running on time. Gentlemen.
Good morning. Rob Pincus, Executive Vice President of the Second Amendment Organization. I sit on the board of Walk the Talk America, working on mental health awareness inside of the gun community. And I wear a lot of hats. I run the Personal Defense Network, ICU training company. This morning, we're talking about the elephant in the room. And as many of you know, there's been a lot of conversation, especially since April, about the issues facing the gun community because of the issues facing the National Rifle Association. But the fact is, we are the gun lobby. Everyone in this room, everyone watching at home, we are the gun lobby. We are the votes. We are the donors. We are the activists. We are the advocates. It is incredibly important to understand how powerful the individual American gun owner is. Everyone in this room, including the people affiliated very close to the NRA, including the people like me who want a strong NRA to represent the loudest voice in American gun ownership, 5 million members, realize that that voice is incredibly important. But that voice is our voice. The voice of the Second Amendment Foundation is our voice. The voice of Gun Rights Policy Conference is certainly our voice inside of this room, but it's the voice of 100 million American gun owners. I've heard it up to 120 million American gun owners. We know the numbers. 47% of Americans have lived in a household with guns. There are hundreds of millions of firearms inside the United States of America that are used responsibly every day. People who remember my speech from last year that I am a big fan of pushing the responsibility side of our rights. Rights come with responsibilities. One of the responsibilities we have is to own our role as the American gun lobby. And that means keeping our house in order as much as it means fighting against those who would take our house away. Take away the house of the Second Amendment, take away the right that protects all of our other freedoms. Break down the organizations inside of our community that lead that fight. And there is no doubt that there is an agenda from outside of the gun community to break down events like this, to break down all of the membership organizations, to break down all of the representation that we have. But the fact is they can't break down 100 million American gun owners. They can't break down Americans. We are the gun lobby. Say it. We are the gun lobby. We are the gun lobby. All day long. You are the gun lobby. I am the gun lobby. All of the organizations are incredibly important. If anything has come from the crisis inside of the community over the last few months, it's a reminder that there's more than one organization out there. There's more than just 5 million NRA members out there. Just in this room alone, I mentioned Walk the Talk America, Second Amendment Organization, Firearms Coalition, obviously Second Amendment Foundation. I've got a list here, but Illinois State Rifle Association. I just spent a week up in Massachusetts, Gun Owners Action League, Black Guns Matter, Armed Equality, Pink Pistols. You all know the organizations. Raise your hand if you're a member of an organization other than the largest organization in the country. Okay? Right? And I know everybody watching this, and people who are watching this video can think of 10 organizations off the top of our head we can all name that represent American gun owners in one way or another. Citizens for the Right to Keep and Bear Arms, Jews for the Preservation of Gun Ownership. Some of these organizations have existed for decades and done great work. And they're going to continue to exist for decades and continue to do great work because we are the American gun lobby. This is not one organization. It's certainly not one guy. It's certainly not a small group of people controlling a lot of funds and resources. But we need to hold ourselves accountable to being the gun lobby. We need to hold those who will represent us accountable for being the gun lobby. And that means 100 million Americans. Now, a lot of people call for unity. A lot of people call for a unified voice. And I get that, and that's important. But what's important is that we get down to the root fundamental of 100 million American gunners. The unity should come from the Second Amendment. The unity should come from our Constitution. The unity should come from our ideals as Americans. The human right for self-defense. The recognition of that right as an individual right in the United States that is often exercised by the right to keep and bear arms, through the right to keep and bear arms. Those positive defensive gun uses that we do read about from time to time, mostly inside of our own circle, but we know that they happen. We know that they happen a lot more than they're reported. Because the mere existence of the Second Amendment protects Americans from enemies foreign and domestic. The mere existence of firearms inside of our homes keeps people from trying to break into our homes and hurt us. The mere existence of a firearm in a holster when around the public space keeps people from hurting us. Because we are the American gun lobby. And the American gun lobby is incredibly important. And the president realizes that. Legislators realize that, regardless of what side of the aisle they're on. This is a huge voting bloc that is represented by 100 million plus Americans. It is not represented by one organization. It is not represented by any one person. And we all need to own that. There are opportunities like Gun Rights Policy Conference. If you're watching this at home, or if you're watching this video later, you're watching any of the videos from any of the leadership, the 1,000+ people that are here at the Gun Rights Policy Conference 2019, share it. You just became a gun rights advocate. Share the articles. Share the videos. Share the streams. Attend the events. Support your state organizations. Support the organization that appeals to your lifestyle. Support the organization that appeals to your verbiage, to your message. Because there's a lot of them out there. And that unity that people call for, I think, is best done through coalition, through collaboration, through cooperation, not by falling in line, not by twisting the statistics, not by saying, well, that's just an attack, that's not real, not by denying, as I've mentioned many times in the past, the potential negative outcomes from firearms ownership. That should be driving our responsibility, should be driving our training, our education, our proper storage, our safety, our responsibility, our advocacy for people learning about firearms, our advocacy for people understanding the gun culture, understanding the responsibility that comes with firearms ownership that is demonstrated by 100 million plus American gun owners, the American gun lobby, every single day. It's incredibly important that we look at unity as coalition. And that means holding each other accountable. It means holding our organizations accountable. It means holding our leadership accountable. And I appreciate the time to talk about this morning. I appreciate the opportunity to introduce Jim Irvine because he represents one of those state organizations from a state I've lived in and spent a lot of time in Ohio. And he is a perfect example of leadership through FASTER, through the Buckeye Firearms Association. Thank you very much this morning. Thank you, Julianne. Thank you, Alan. Thank you, Governor Collins. Thank you all for being with me. Good morning. We face next year a battle that we have never faced before. An enemy stronger than we've ever had to face, and more important victories that we're going to have to attain. I know there's folks that are worried about the NRA, our strongest voice, most powerful lobbying entity in the country for years. There are folks that will tell you the NRA is in awesome shape and it will be there for us next year. And I hope so. But hope is not a plan. We need to prepare and be better and stronger, even if they are not able to step up to the plate the way they have in years past. And so that sounds daunting at first, but when you look at it, I think really we're okay. Because there's only two ways this can go. Either we're all hypocrites, or we're in good shape. Because every one of us has a bumper sticker, or a button, or a shirt that says, I am the NRA. I'm the NRA. It's a lot more than one man. It's more than a building in Fairfax. It's an idea that I will train and I will defend myself and my life and my families and my friends and my neighbors and even a complete stranger in his moment of need. That is who we're about. So we get there by Buckeye Firearms Association owning Ohio. We need to step up to the plate as an organization. No entity is going to replace the NRA.
But we can step up in Ohio and we can own Ohio. We can start building an army right now. We can work with gun stores and gun show promoters and build an army of registered voters through targeted registration. We can build that army that we can put into play next year for the elections to win this stuff. And we as individuals can do the same thing. For other groups, Buckeye's going to own Ohio, but Arizona's Citizens Defense League is going to own Arizona. Florida Cherry's going to own Florida. Cal Guns is going to own California. Illinois Rifle Association is going to own that. Think how much harder it is for our enemy who wants to target one organization and take us down. Think how much stronger we become when we are 50 to hundreds of grassroots organizations across this country, all pulling together, all working together for a common cause. We become not weaker, we become many times stronger, and that is what we need to do. So we train at the range to defend our life. But more important than that, we are here today to train our minds, not just to defend our life, but to defend our way of life. Because that is what's at stake in the next 14 months for us, is our way of life in the United States. You lose a gunfight, you may never get another chance to come back and win. And if we lose next year's elections, we may never get another chance to save our country for our kids and grandkids. It is that important. Failure is not an option. So, thank you for gathering here today. Because today, SAF and the panel of speakers that we're going to hear are going to help us prepare for battle. They're going to give us the ideas and the tools that we need to leave here and go home, strengthen our organizations, strengthen ourselves as individuals, work together to recruit new members, and a year from now, I look forward to seeing you with an army strong to carry us to an awesome victory in November. Thank you very much.
Everybody's on time. I would like to invite Mark Barnes, who is going to discuss the federal affairs briefing, legislation affecting civil society. This is a moving target. So kudos to Mark for being willing to follow the play target, so to speak.
Good morning, and my name is Mark Barnes. I'm from Mark Barnes and Associates. We're firearms lawyers. We represent the trade, individuals, and organizations that are involved in firearms, gun ownership, and we do international public policy as well. So I don't really want to be too redundant on what Alan brought to your attention in terms of what's happening in Washington, but a couple of things that I'm going to give a little bit more detail on. As Alan said, the President's been considering universal background checks in a limited form, red flag laws, extreme protection orders, and also he's had to listen to the Democrats who have been proposing individual owner licensing and registration, which of course he rejects outright. Also, as Alan pointed out, H.R. 8 and H.R. 112 or 1112 passed by the House in February will not see the light of day, in my opinion, or any form of it. And as he pointed out, the contenders for the Democratic nomination for the presidency have been virulent in their anti-gun approaches. And that has made it a lot more difficult to have any kind of balanced dialogue in Washington. Which brings me to an important point that I wanted to bring to the entire group's attention. How many people in here have looked at the United States Secret Service report on mass shootings that was published in July of this year? Raise your hand. a few of you have. All of you should go to the website for the Secret Service or just Google the name of the report, which is Mass Attacks in Public Spaces. Everyone wants mass shootings to be decreased, of course. And when you look at how the Secret Service approaches this, I think it would be well advised for our policymakers in Washington, D.C. to read the facts. The summary from the Secret Service report says that many of the key findings in both 2017 and 2018 reflect similarities among the incidents and the attackers. For example, attacks occurred across the country and attackers predominantly used firearms. Okay, we all know that, but let's continue. The majority of attackers elicited concern in others, and 2/3 had histories of mental health symptoms or treatment. A majority of the attackers had recently experienced significant stressors, with just over half the attackers experiencing financial instability in that same time frame. The report, I think, gives all of us who are the gun lobby the facts on mass shootings, because the tables give you the data that you need to have discourse with your legislators in your individual states. And really, the Secret Service makes what they call considerations. When you think about the role of the Secret Service, the primary role is to stop the threat. How do we stop the threat? And they go through several considerations. First of all, mental health and mental wellness. Secondly, the importance of getting people involved to report. But the Secret Service is quite fair. They say, we're not seeking over-reporting. We're seeking for people to have a situational awareness so they can bring it to the attention of authorities who may be able to help intervene. And finally, the law enforcement partnerships with the community. None of this really comes down to gun control. It really comes down to how do we assess the threat, design strategies to intervene, and reduce the violence. But this isn't the dialogue in Washington right now. The dialogue is to focus on the firearm. And that's really missing the entire point. The entire point is that if you want to reduce this type of gun violence, we already know the facts. We already have the data. With regard to what Alan mentioned on the quote idea that's floating around Washington, you can find on the net, for example, idea for new unlicensed commercial sale and background checks. It's a one-page policy paper, and this policy paper, as Alan mentioned, outlines a couple of quote ideas. Now, this paper was ascribed to being done by perhaps the Department of Justice. I'm not sure who drafted it inside the administration, but it does contain a provision to have limited background checks performed by non-gun dealers through people who would be licensed transfer agents. Part of the idea about this idea of licensed transfer agents is that the buyer information would not be retained. It's an idea that's not necessarily new. I represent the National Association of Arms Shows, the gun show promoters in the United States. In 1999, many of you will recall when President Clinton, who hardly supported gun rights, was the author of the assault weapons ban, wanted to eliminate gun shows, essentially. And we defeated him in 1999. But one of the considerations at that time was to allow private citizens an opportunity to know who they're selling the firearm to, whether or not they're a prohibited possessor. So it's not a new idea, it's an old idea, and whether it will, gain any currency and further the dialogue in Washington, we'll just have to see. Finally, I just want to mention some of the kinds of pieces of legislation that have been introduced, which all of you know seem quite predictable in light of what we had in terms of a run of mass shootings this summer. H.R. 4255, requiring marking of secondary hidden serial numbers in all firearms. H.R. 4264, regarding prompt availability of records for military judicial proceedings. Good idea, because we have one instance in which the government information on a prohibited possessor was not put into the NICS system. H.R. 4271, requiring all firearms or their packaging to be labeled with National Suicide Prevention Lifeline information. H.R. 4324, expanding the current multiple sale reporting requirements to include all firearms. Here's one, H.R. 2449, by presidential candidate, although he may not stay in much longer, according to reports this morning, Senator Cory Booker, requiring, you've got to get that field down a lot more, requiring individual licensing to purchase or receive firearms with each license valid for only a single firearm acquisition. Yeah, okay. So this is the kind of stuff that is happening in Washington right now, and it's going to continue. What is really going to happen? I tend to agree with Alan that at the end of the day, you still need 60 votes in the United States Senate. And I think it was best summarized by a couple of Republican senators who are deeply devoted to the Second Amendment and were speaking out and saying, I'm willing to look at almost anything and be reasonable. But I'm going to tell you right now that anything that infringes on the right of a law-abiding American to keep and bear arms, I'm not going to support it. And I would hope that all of those senators and the good members of the House of Representatives who are willing to listen will look at the data that our own government has produced, that we've paid for, that shows that there are strategies that can significantly reduce mass shootings without having to infringe on our gun rights. Thank you.
I would like everyone who has an empty seat next to them to please raise their hand, because we've got people in the back who need to come and sit down. So people come and sit down, please. Please come and take a seat. I would like to get the state legislative affairs briefing. Number one, to please come up to the stage. I would like to ask each one of you to start your remarks by giving us your name and association. We've got seats for everybody now. I have 3 seats down here that are saved, but so far nobody's taken them, so I'm going to say they're not saved anymore. So I have 3 right up front. If somebody's interested in these. Okay, does everybody who wants to see have one, please? Thank you very much. We will have the state legislative affairs briefing. John Cushman, who, by the way, is running for the NRA board. Craig DeLuz, Dave Kopp, Richard Pearson, Alexander Rubian, and Holly Sullivan. All our speakers today will be in alphabetical order. That seems to be the fairest way to do it. So we'll start with John Cushman. Thank you so much.
Good morning, my Marty. I love getting here early in the morning and getting everybody out of school late. I don't want to talk to you folks if you have lunch. Anyway, you see a lot of drooping eyes. My name is John Cushman. I'm the president and founder of an organization called Sportsmen's Association for Firearms Education 30 years ago. We started with 5 people, we have 700 members now. All we do is political and legislative work. I'm also a director with the New York State Rifle and Pistol Association for the past 15 years, it's a state association. The ones who are having the major lawsuit that's coming before the U.S. Supreme Court in October this year. Anyway, it was a long time in coming, and we didn't really think it was going to happen for a while. I'm also a 25-year veteran with the NRA Board of Directors, and therefore I thank you for mentioning that I am running again. It would seem they have some problems, they need some help in fixing, which I will do. Instead of me telling you all about the bad legislation, which most of you probably already know, you read the newspapers, you see the magazines, you look at the TV, it's amazing the number and variety of anti-gun legislation these folks. I just went to a dinner last night, not last night, the night before. We had 400 people there for a Friends of NRA dinner, fundraiser. There were 100 anti-gun protesters out there with 3 state assemblymen. And you should hear the things they call us and the things they say. And that's the downright scary part. Some of these people have become so fanatical that they advocate hurting other people, killing NRA members or gun owners. We walked in and I was accused of, oh, you gun owners, you're the ones that you play on the blood of the children to try to push your agenda that you need guns for self-defense. And I said, what are you doing? What are you doing at all? And the thing that bothers me is as I look at the audience, this audience is about 75 to 80% men. One of the things we do locally to try to combat the anti-gun legislation is we do a lot of programs with women, because for some reason women saying the same exact things that the men say carries with it more weight, as if they consider all the ramifications of it, and therefore it makes more sense when it comes from a woman. Just for the record, we've done the Women on Target Shooting program for 15 years, and we've trained over 1,900 women who've never handled a gun before. And it's amazing. It's amazing how many of them we haven't had one complaint about. They're actually feel empowered and more knowledgeable. And I'll tell you now, most of them won't get a gun. But the idea that they know about it, what's right and what's wrong, is unbelievable. And they have become very big advocates of ours. And for that I am very grateful. And so could you, and I thank every one of you ladies who are here today, supporting your men and yourself, because this is your issue. I only got a couple minutes left, so let me make it quick. Like I said, instead of going over all of the bad legislation proposed, I mean, try some. If you have a raffle, New York State wants to ban the idea that you can use a firearm in a raffle. As if the person who wins the raffle for a gun is somehow not going to go through the background check to get it. This is how stupid they are. And they are stupid. It's either that or they really aren't paying any attention. The big issue is, no matter what is going on, you must contact your assemblyman, your senator, and don't stop writing letters to the media. They don't want to hear from you. The legislators don't want to hear from you. But as I told you last year, I gave you a process by which we use the mail to help us. Keep it up. Don't stop. The legislators, even the ones who are the most strongest anti-gunners, have a hard time overcoming the will of 100 letters coming into that subject. It's real hard for them to overcome it. And then when you face them in a legislative meeting or an agenda, they don't really know what to say. They try using the same arguments. Well, you guys have gotten hundreds of letters. Why are you going against the will of the people you represent? And then they have a problem. Well, we didn't mean that. They're going a little too far now. The truth is, they're going as far as they can get away with it. It's up to us to make sure we don't let them get away with it at all. As for the women, I want to just go back to it. I'm a certified instructor for 38 years. And I'm telling you, the women are better shooters than the men. Every single time. It's amazing when they give classes how the girls freely admit, well, I don't know that, so I will listen and I will learn. And I haven't met a guy yet that comes into my class. Oh, no, I did that before. What's it? What that is? It's a safety. Don't worry, we'll explain it all to you. Well, yeah, oh, I heard about that. But thank you, ladies, and I hope you continue it. I beg you all know people. Talk to them, tell them, do not ever give up, do not ever stop.